So Ruben, what is Cloud9?
So what is Cloud9? Well, Cloud9 is a development environment. Development environment that tries to be really fast and really quick to use and offer everything that the current development environments have, but then in the cloud via a browser accessible. So you can access it from any browser all around the world, wherever you are, and have your same code base there. But not only that, have your same runtime environment. So wherever you are, you're good to go. And by having pre-integrations with deployment services, with all sorts of development services, you can very easily and quickly start your project and continue.
Yeah, cool.
Great, and who is Ajax.org, the company behind Cloud9?
So Ajax.org was the company that we had really building a UI technology, UI framework for the browser. So making an open source available technology to building UI components and building applications. And at a certain point, we noticed that we want to have a product rather than a library. Because libraries are not really a business. They should be open source. People should be able to very easily use them. And that's when we came up with the idea for Cloud9.
Okay, so why do you build an IDE in the cloud? I mean, we have all Eclipse and
well, if you've ever used Eclipse, you know that it's a couple hundred megabytes. It's super slow to start up. It's not really nice, and then it's only really good for Java. If you want to use it for JavaScript or Ruby or any of these other languages, it's a pain in the ass. So that's why many people are still using VI or Emacs or Notepad++ to edit their code. And there needs to be a real IDE for JavaScript developers in Ruby and Python, these dynamic languages. And that's a whole different problem space, but more what you really want is to be able to access your application from anywhere. Because we're all building these cloud applications, but we're using a desktop application. I was locked into Windows for years. I only switched last year when we built Cloud9. And that's the freedom that you get. Besides, of course, other features like collaboration, which makes it really easy to work together on the same document.
So I think you've started to touch on this, but we're kind of curious who you expect to actually start using Cloud9, who's going to get the most out of it at the moment? What kind of people?
Well, I think that the JavaScript developers get the most out of it right now, because that's the language we really support, especially for Node.js, running JavaScript on the server, and that's booming. Lots and lots of people want to use it. We're really the only IDE that allows proper debugging and proper tooling and PM integration, which is the package manager. So that would be the group that can have the biggest advantage using Cloud9. But then if you look at groups of developers collaborating online, that's the second group, and that could be any language. If you just want to type some Ruby, you can in Cloud9, and then collaborating on that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
And how many people are currently using it? Do you have any user stats you can share with us?
We have 45,000 signups, and that's growing quickly. And yeah, we have an active user base, especially among the JavaScript people right now, JavaScript community.
Do you have any big project or project that is hosted in Cloud9?
Well, we don't actually do hosting. We purely do the development.
For sure.
So I'm not fully aware of all the projects that are there and that people are using. I know that the guys that are building Socket.io are using it. Many of the core Node library creators like Express and Connect are using Cloud9 to develop. Yeah.
In regards to documentation, do you think we will see quick start guides soon? Because we have this great console about bugs or errors and things like that, but I miss something like first steps guide or something like that.
So getting started guide to Cloud9.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are actually working on that. And we are using Confluence to build up a wiki and a knowledge base to put all the documentation in. We're creating movies to show very common use cases and how to do them in Cloud9. I expect them to be there in October, November.
Great. And to talk about Node.js, in your opinion, which are the best frameworks or libraries to use when we are working with this technology, with Node.js?
Yeah. There aren't really big frameworks. I think that yeah, you have Connect and Express, which is basically an HTTP server, and everything you'd expect from Apache written in Node. So it makes it really easy to build your site like that. You have to understand that Node is different from, let's say, PHP, because every Node has state, right? It's a single running process. Yeah. So what you see is there are a lot of libraries that do a single thing, which is, I think, a great way. Because if you have a singular framework, you have to choose that, and it might have, it might lack some things. And by just having this one library that does FTP and this other library that does, I don't know, PDF writing or something. And there are thousands and thousands, if you look at on GitHub, I think that in GitHub, JavaScript is now more popular than Ruby, and that's because of Node.js, and that's because the amount of libraries there are great. One other thing that I want to mention is that if you build a code in Node.js, you have to work with asynchronicity in a similar way that you have in the browser, but it's much more common. Because every time you read a file, every time you connect to a database or open a socket, you're doing it asynchronous, and usually in a multi-step way. So that means that you get a lot of nesting, and at a certain point that becomes unreadable, or at least not very nice to read, especially for others, especially for junior members of the team. So there are certain libraries that make that part easier. And yeah, we've been evaluating a couple. Don't ask me the names, I don't know them by heart. But there are some good ones out there that are worth trying.
Okay. What exciting new features can we expect to see in the next few months in Cloud9?
In the next few months, okay, we'll be revamping our collaboration part a lot, so you can actually do the real-time editing and have a proper chat, proper group chat, all those things. There will be a Git UI, so really being able to see the history and browse through it. And we'll have what else? We'll have Dropbox support.
Oh, great!
Yeah, and several other features. There will be some cool ones coming out soon. Yeah.
Okay. Another question. What is your vision for the product? Where do you see it's going to be in the next 2-3 years?
I think for the next 2 or 3 years you'll see a major adoption of the cloud, even more than it's doing right now. You'll see lots and lots of services popping up, and that means that every service will have their own SDK, every service will have a different way of talking and engaging the developer, and we feel that with Cloud9 being and offering an editing environment, but more, so also an integration with these other services, you'll actually be able to very easily build for the cloud. And everybody will build for the cloud, so that means that Cloud9 is the best solution. And even though there might be some competitors in the future, we feel that Cloud9 is a very strong case and a good implementation to be dominant.
Great.
So what sort of other development languages are you thinking of supporting on Cloud9? Like Java, Clojure, those kind of things?
We have been looking at compiled languages. Our focus first is JavaScript, and then we'll do Ruby, Python, and PHP. And for each of those languages, we want to have the full spectrum. So the package managers support all the different libraries that are out there. At a certain point, have autocomplete, which is, by the way, a very cool feature that's coming out in a couple of months as well. But we have been looking at Java. We're now testing with running Java and compiling Java from Cloud9, and then of course all the languages that use the JVM suddenly become available as well.
So you guys raised a bunch of money just recently from Excel and Atlassian?
Correct.
And you know, looking at your website, and you know, after that, I imagine you guys are investing in the business. Are you trying to hire a lot of people at the moment?
Definitely. I think that this current quarter is all about getting the team into the state that we want to really be able to move Cloud9 forward. And that's developers, a lot of developers, but also people around that, people to help with marketing, to really organize the business in a way that it can scale up later on.
Cool. And how's the hiring going so far?
Actually better than expected. Yeah, a lot of people know us already, especially in the Netherlands, but also in the US. And many people, especially from the JavaScript and Node.js community, are coming to us and talking about working for us. So it's been going very well. Yeah.
And you're trying to hire people where exactly?
Well, basically, or either in Amsterdam or in San Francisco. But it also means that we, for instance, have a guy from New York. He wrote JS DOM, which is the Node.js DOM implementation, basically. And he'll start working for us in September. We'll be moving to San Francisco. And we have some people from Spain, from Scotland that also moved to Amsterdam to work for us.
Cool. That sounds good. And how are you finding people? Is it through just word of mouth primarily, or are you guys?
Primarily, yeah. I think that the most people we met actually at conferences. Okay. So they either heard Rick or Fabian or Sergi speak, or Mike, or they just met us somewhere. I think that's the biggest chunk. Although we did put a small little sticker on the front website that just links to our email address. Okay. And like every day we're getting 3 or so people that want to work for us. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and then we did advertise a little bit here and there, but that was for functions that are not really for inside the community.
And you guys have a pretty nice canal office too right now, right?
Yeah, and that's it's becoming too small. In a couple of months we'll outgrow it, so we're looking for a new place. But it's hard because we don't have the same quality as we have now. It's an awesome office.
Yeah.
Cool. So, just curious, what you think the sort of really interesting and really exciting industry trends around here for developers, for yourself, and for Cloud9?
Industry trends.
And technology trends as well.
Right. So, I mean, I think the cloud is a trend, definitely. And if you look at developer tooling, services like, for instance, BitBucket or GitHub are definitely setting a trend for developers to have their code online, which was always a scary thing. So I think that's a trend. If you look at JavaScript and its popularity, it's actually only a part of a bigger trend, which is the functional languages becoming more mainstream, which is very cool, because they're very powerful and you're able to do a lot of stuff in much less code. And JavaScript is just, because it's everywhere, right? It's in the browser, so most people already know a little bit about it. I think that's an important trend, and probably 2 trends that are very connected to Cloud9.
Great.
What are your views on the HTML5 and JavaScript Node.js explosion?
My views on it. Well, I think that HTML5 is great because it got embraced by so many browser vendors, so many people, and it started out as the I think web application specification before it was called HTML5, and then they moved it to name it HTML5, which I think was a brilliant move. But in the end, it really is a web application API specification, and that's great because for 10 or 12 years, I always saw the browser as a way to run applications, which is why we built the UI. Because we saw Visual Basic and thought, okay, you can do this in the browser. So, yeah, I think that combined with Node.js is moving JavaScript to a position where it could compete with Java at a certain point, both on the server and, of course, the old Java applets and all that stuff that you had on the client.
Great.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to say to the viewing public out there?
Sign up and try Cloud9.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Right.